Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we've got another start and sit video for you guys this week. We are talking running back position. Now, of course, anytime I'm talking start and sit, this will be for full PPR or even half PPR. If it is a standard league, hit me up in the comments down below. I'd love to help you guys out with those tough questions you've got for week one. And yes, I mentioned it. Week one is finally here. We've got a game on Thursday, Friday, and of course, Sundays and Monday. So we've got a good slate of games going on, and I'm super excited. I'm sure you guys are just as pumped as I am. And again, let's jump right into the start and sit video. So the first thing I want to mention, again, this is full PPR. I'm not going to go into every single game. You guys, of course, can hit me up in the comments down below to help answer those questions. And I will be live Sunday morning to help any last minute start and sit video or start and sit questions you guys have for me. Now, these are your obvious running backs for this particular week. Some of these backs are going to be very common. You're not going to, again, see these guys in my start and sit list very often. Again, obvious players like Christian McCaffrey should be in your lineup every single week. Now, the first player I'm going to mention as a good start is going to be James Cook versus the Cardinals. He's got a great matchup against the Cardinals, who allow 27.7 points a game to the running back position last season, which was worst in the NFL. James Cook showed flashes last season, and with the new OC that had taken over, the run game became a very crucial aspect for the Buffalo Bills. Now, that should continue this season with the new additions at wide receiver, especially since they're getting acclimated. Cook will be a big piece in this season, so I do expect James Cook to have obviously a great season, but also a great start to this week. Now, my second running back I'm going to mention this week is going to be Kenneth Walker versus the Broncos. Walker hasn't been the back that most had anticipated, and unfortunately, Seahawks kind of felt the same way by drafting Charbonnet last season. Now, Walker is the RB1, and I do expect him to have a pretty good season, but there are some hesitations. Now, this week, I like him. Walker finished as RB19 last season, but has a really good matchup for week one. The Broncos struggled against the run last season, finishing as the 31st worst against running backs, allowing 27 points a game. And again, that's craziness. Now, everything is going off of what was last season. There are, of course, new additions, defensive coordinator changes, things like that. So they might change a little bit. But a lot of these teams are unfortunately going to be dealing with some of the same chaos and headaches they had last season. My other running back I have as a good start this week is going to be Rachaad White versus the Commanders. Rachaad White was a surprise last season, giving Canales a lot of credit. He, of course, now is gone, left the Bucs, and now is now head coaching of the Panthers. So White is someone that a lot of people are unsure of, but he's got a great matchup this week. White finished as RB4 last season, but he only averaged 15.8 points, which was RB10. So that was a concern. He is obviously inefficient at times, and some of that is just the way that run game was. But with that said, he should have some success against a poor run defense in Washington. Now, I do expect the Commanders to be better than last year, just because they obviously have a new head coach in Dan Quinn, who is very defensive minded. But Quinn defenses have struggled against stopping the run. Especially as a Cowboy fan, I can tell you that it is very true. And the Commanders did allow over 26 points a game to backs, so definitely a concern that could go into this season. I do expect them to be better, but I think this is a great matchup for Rachaad White. Now, the last running back I want to mention as a good start is going to be Joe Mixon versus the Colts. Look, Mixon finds himself in a very strong offensive team with a second-year quarterback in Stroud, who was amazing last season, and, of course, an amazing trio of wide receivers, which is only going to help Joe Mixon this year. His first matchup against the Colts, look, they allowed 26 points a game last season to running backs, and Mixon was RB6 last season, which was averaging over 15 points. So very similar to Rachaad White, where he had some inefficiencies, wasn't the best when it came to points per game, but he played all season, and he was able to finish in the top 10. Do I expect him to be top 10 this year? No. But I think Mixon has that RB2 style of play this year and going forward, and may end up being a nice little steal, because a lot of times I saw him in mock drafts or even real drafts falling quite late, so I do like him this week. Now, first sit is going to be Kyren Williams versus the Lions. I get this might get some comments going, but I don't love Kyren's matchup this week. Sure, Kyren was RB2 last season with points per game of 21 points per game. only behind Christian McCaffrey, but the Lions were the best against the run, only allowing 60 yards on the ground and only 15 points per game to the running back position. I also am curious if the Rams are going to use Corum this game, which makes me a little nervous for Kyron. I'm not nervous that Kyron's going to be a punt returner or any of the special teams activities. That does not that's not a fear for me, but Corum is an important piece. I do think they want to keep Kyron healthy. Again, this is just not a matchup I love for him this week. Now, another running back I'm going to recommend as a sit is Austin Eckler versus the Bucks. I'm sure Eckler may not be someone's starter just because, again, nobody really expected him to even have a big presence for the Commanders. But I do expect him to be essentially the RB1 as of right now for the Commanders, with Brian Robinson heavily involved. Now, this is not a matchup I would put Eckler in. Bucks were the third best against the run and only allowing 17 points per game to the position. Eckler will also have some value in PPR, but I do believe they're going to run a committee backfield, especially, again, Brian Robinson, who was very good last season. I do think he's going to have a strong value and presence in each and every single game. So Eckler is really tough to play, but I wanted to mention him because I know some people are going to been asking those questions, and he might be somebody you may have to start, but I would try to find an alternative if you can. Now, this one is going to be a big hot take, and I know it's going to be crazy, but I have Breece Hall as a sit this week versus the 49ers. Look, Breece, obviously the first round pick that most people had in their drafts this season, is going to be hard to sit, and you probably aren't going to do that. But if you have other options and the way your roster is built and you have plenty of running backs, you may want to look at putting him on the bench this week. You're going against the 49ers, who are very tough against the run, only allowing 64 yards on the ground, and they were the fifth best against running backs in fantasy points. So this is a very tough matchup. Do I think Breece Hall is going to get plenty of touches? Absolutely. And sometimes you're just going to rely on that and hope that he maybe get 4 or 5 catches in the air, 60 yards, 70 yards on the ground, 30 yards, and he might squeak out with some double-digit performance. But this is a really tough matchup for Breece Hall. Do I expect most people to sit him? No, but I am very hesitant. If I have him on my team and I have other options, I may put him on the bench. Now, the last running back I'm going to recommend as a sit is DeAndre Swift versus the Titans. Swift is an interesting player this season. I do think he's a very talented back. He has dealt with injuries, and he's on a team that I think is overall a very talented team. The Bears have shown a lot this preseason, shown a lot this training camp. If you watched any of the Hard Knocks, it's been a great team to watch. They are going to focus on, obviously, Caleb Williams. They're going to put a lot of focal point on him. They're going to obviously have some great receivers on the outside. So Swift has some opportunities, but this is a really tough matchup against the Titans. Titans only allowed 18 points a game to the running back last season, which was 6th best in the league. And they also only allowed 100 yards on the ground twice. So this is not a matchup that I expect Swift to have a really great game. I do think this is going to be more of a passing game. Again, curious how it plays out for Caleb Williams and, Keenan and all them. So stay tuned for those start and sit videos. I did have Caleb as a nice little sleeper if you haven't checked out my quarterback start and sit, but Swift is somebody I'm going to sit this week. Now, my sleepers for this week, I've got Javonte Williams, Gus Edwards, and Aaron Jones. I'm not going to go too deep into the reason why, but I think all three of those running backs have a nice opportunity this week and could be nice sleepers if you aren't considering starting them or putting them in the flex. I like their matchups a lot. So that is my start and sit video and sleepers for the running back position for week 1. If you guys do have questions, hit me up in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe and, of course, like the video as well. Putting a lot of content out. We got your start and sit video already out for the quarterback. We'll be putting that out for wide receiver and the tight end position. Of course, make sure you guys are going to be there for Sunday morning. I'll be doing a live start and sit video to help you guys out with those tough questions. So again, subscribe and like, and I'll check you guys out next time.